Okay, and Kari, whenever you're ready, we can get going.
All right. Well, hello to everybody who's decided to join us on this beautiful sunny day in New Mexico. We are the TAAC, Taos Abstract Artist Collective, and we promote abstract artists working in or around Taos, New Mexico, toward the exchange of ideas, new aesthetics, and creative concepts. Taos is synonymous with abstract thinking, with origins in indigenous geometries, transcendental and modernist movements, and conceptual and land installation. Once the nexus for westward bound artists, Taos unleashes expansive abstract thinkers. TAAC is very much an inclusive group that amplifies self-identifying abstract artists living and working in northern New Mexico, honoring our intersecting identities across race, national origin, ethnicity, culture, size, gender identity, and expression, disability, sexuality, age, socioeconomic status, neurotype, religion, and or spiritual practice. All abstract artists are welcome in their pursuit of provocative expression. And that's really what we've experienced with our group so far, is a very eclectic group of bright artists in many, many fields. And today we're going to talk with Karen Theisen, who does wall sculptures and a number of other things, but that is her predominant field. So Karen, I will wave your hand at everybody, say hi, and everybody greet Karen. She's our artist of the time. Great.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yep, we're so happy to have you here too. It's just one of the things that TAAC has done that's a little bit different than many groups, is the opportunity to explore things in person. We have a video that Mark Smith is our videographer and has done a wonderful job with. And then we'll follow it up with about 30 minutes worth of questions that you can pretty much pick Karen's brain and ask her. Well, it's pretty much open unless Karen says no. So I'll just leave it at
that. I just want to caveat that no hardball questions.
Oh, no. You may have to define hardball.
I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. So we're going to put the video on and let you get a good look at what we talked about at Karen's studio in Santa Fe about 3.5 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So here we go.
So tell me about you. Where were you before you got to Santa Fe? Oh. What give us a hop, skip, and a jump through your life?
Yeah, no, I moved here from the San Francisco Bay Area a year and a half ago.
Why?
I couldn't afford an art studio in the Bay Area. If you know that area at all, it's just super expensive. But I was able to find this place and have this studio in my home, and then the natural beauty around here is off the charts. So I wanted to have that as well, and all of the artists and the art scene here is fantastic. So,
did you? I think you told me that you lived on the East Coast at one time. You went to Virginia Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So you didn't just pop up in San Francisco. You lived other places.
I was pretty much grew up on the East Coast in Maryland. Went to school at Virginia Commonwealth University for my BFA in crafts, and then I moved to California in my 20s. So, I got my MFA at California College of the Arts in sculpture, but I felt like my art degree almost like took the wind out of my sails in some ways in terms of making art, because I felt like I actually moved up to the mountains in Lake Tahoe area, and that's where this body of work started. So I was really inspired by nature, and it was almost like the art, I feel like sometimes art school is so super serious that you feel like you should do it in the right way. And it kind of intimidated me for a while. And I think when I moved to Lake Tahoe and I started working with found materials, is when this whole body work. So like this is one of the pieces I worked on up there. Well, these are fern leaves. And what I did is I found boulders in the area because I love those organic shapes, and I started to mold my sculptures around the boulders that I found locally.
What is this material here?
And so this is hot melt glue. So I actually used hot melt glue quite a bit in graduate school for my sculptures, and then I started to incorporate the natural found materials with the hot melt glue. And so this is what I was kind of working on when I was up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then these kind of evolved into some of the wall sculptures, and then
Like this one up here that we have?
yeah, like that one.
The blue and pink one.
Yeah.
It's very organic. It's very soothing shapes, I have to say, that one. So you moved to Santa Fe, and your art took off. What happened?
Yeah, it kind of has. I think having an art studio has made a huge difference. And then just, that's kind of how my creativity works. Like once I get started, it just really flows. And so I had the right environment.
So what are you trying to get your viewer to see, feel, experience?
Well, they're primarily inspired by nature, and I love to hike, and so a lot of the shapes that I use are kind of based on the hills and valleys and mountains where I love to hike, and I see those as sort of forms when I'm hiking that have this undulating curvilinear shapes to them that I love, and so they're sort of like, oh, that could be a really cool sculpture, or like some of these pieces are inspired by water, and sort of like the waviness of water and how it moves, and the motion is also a big part of it. I love to dance, and so for me, I really want to capture a sense of movement in my pieces, and then the dynamic quality of how the sunlight affects them and changes them. Also the dynamic quality of how you move around them, and they shift and change depending on your viewpoint. So it all kind of is part of capturing a 3D, movement in space, if you will. That's kind of based on nature. So it's sort of incorporating a lot of these different ideas about that I'm drawn to. And I think my work, I see it as being sort of about climate change on a certain level. I think like the materials are river rocks, and in this climate where I live in the desert, they use a lot of, there's not much water, so you can't use a lot of water for a lawn. You don't see lawns around here. And you don't have a lot of water, for certain plants that require a lot of water. They can't, there's just not enough water for them. So what they end up using a lot of times is river rocks as a sort of decorative way to landscape, dry landscaping. And so to me, and I love the shapes so much. That they are so sculptural, and so that's why they use them in dry landscaping, I think, is because they're a beautiful, they add texture and beauty where you can't grow plants necessarily. So they've sort of become like, literally they're a substitute for plants and water, and so for me they're very symbolic of kind of climate change and the lack of water because of that. So that's a big part of why I use those materials. Yeah, so the titles also relate to that in terms of a lot of times my titles relate to states of water. For instance, this one's called Hazy. This piece back here is called Misty. So they're this one's called Wavy. So they're kind of related to that, but also the emotion behind it of some of the, and I had a series called Swell and Swirl. And so it's sort of about emotions, like, you know, emotions swirling within you about this potential loss of the natural world, you know, is kind of like part of what I'm trying to get at, is some of that emotion behind, you know, to me, and also the spaces in between the rocks. You know, it's kind of that sense of loss of what we potentially could lose, you know, like just that, you know, so much sadness that I feel about that. And so I want that sense of emotion, you know, to sort of come into the feel of the experience of the sculpture. So I, you know, that's why I think I just like to use those kind of metaphors in some of the titles of my works. In nature, you know, nothing is ever perfectly straight or perfectly at a right angle. So like you know, I love undulating shapes and forms like you find out in nature. So that's really a big part of the inspiration. But then I'm also a digital designer. So some of the op art, some of the saturated colors and the grids kind of come from that side of me. So it's kind of marrying my digital aesthetic, which I love, with sort of the natural, you know, world, which I also love. So this is painted actually with a paint that's called, you know, Anish Kapoor. He actually patented the blackest black paint. Well, there's an artist who took that idea and because you can't, it's sort of anathema for an artist to like patent something artistic. It's almost like obnoxious, right? And so this artist made his own version of the blackest black paint, and he
patented it.
no, but he sold it. So I bought some of it, and that's what I used on this piece. And it just absorbs the light, so it almost like flattens out the shapes, which I kind of really love. And they kind of almost have like a pillowy feel to them. Or a coal.
These look like discs.
Yeah.
These look like discs as
Yeah.
opposed to those that look like, because you can see the light hitting on each one of those round pieces of the blue one.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, lighter side, darker side and all this, but here they're so flat
Yeah.
that it looks like they're discs and not rocks.
Yeah. So that's sort of like the op art thing, you know, of it making it really graphical, almost like flattening it out, but then you still have the 3D-ness. So it kind of plays with your perception in a way, which I kind of like that idea. I think I'm trying to draw people in with sort of this optical illusion of, you know, kind of like, what is that? Like, how is that even? Because sometimes, like, the reason I use this steel wire is because it's reflective and it almost like disappears. That's what I'm trying to do. And then it looks like these rocks are kind of like floating in space. And I kind of want to pull people in, like, what is going on with that? How is that, you know, what's going on? And then that's how I hope to pull people in. And then also the saturated colors, and then, you know, have them engage with it a little bit more if they get pulled into it.
Well, the saturated colors also hide the wires because you see the saturated color.
Exactly.
And you're not paying attention. Whereas if it were a flatter, calmer, more neutral color, the metal armature would be more visible. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have a piece someplace that doesn't have such nice, wonderful colors and contrast?
I made one that was all white with white rocks, that because I was trying to see how different colors worked. And that one, it's much more subtle. You know, actually the shadows are a lot more prevalent when it's just white because there's more contrast. But yeah, I do really like the gradations.
You have a very kind of concrete process that you go through.
Yeah, I mean, I have like all of my rocks in the different sizes. So I go from my extra small rocks to the small, to the medium, to the large, to the extra large, and so that's what sort of adds to the dimension because they're already, dimensional, but then I kind of use that optical illusion of the things that are closer to you are larger and the things that are smaller are further away or smaller. I have a sketch, and then a lot of times I'll like lay out the piece flat, with the rocks and just sort of get a sense for like how it's going to lay out. And then I'll move to clay, and then I'll sort of sketch out the shape of the piece on a piece of cardboard, and then I'll make a 3D form out of clay, just out of regular old clay, and make it sort of a curved shape like that. And then I'll trace out the grid onto the clay of where the wires are going to go, and that'll be my pattern. And then I'll lay the wire down onto the grid, and then I'll glue them together. But now I'm going to be soldering them together.
You solder them on the clay?
Yep. And then when and then I formed this one over a piece of clay. You lift it off and it just takes on the shape of the clay.
I see.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. And then you just pull it off, and then, and so I'll drill a hole into the rocks, and then I will glue, and I have, currently using copper now, but I will epoxy in the wire, and we talked about this, see how the wire is hooked like that.
That's an important feature then.
Yeah, this was we're talking about innovating. So I originally did not do that. And then what was happening is sometimes the wire would kind of turn in the hole. And then I actually saw something, I think it was on YouTube, where it inspired me, and I was just like, oh, maybe if I put a little like hook at the end and glue, epoxy it in, that will help. And it pretty much keeps it in there, so it's not going to turn, and it's not going to come out.
And that's critical.
Yeah, so that worked out really well. And then I use copper because that's the best material to solder with. So now I'm using copper that I glue into the wires, into the rocks. And then so once it's glued in, it's like this. And then I just wrap that around each joint of the armature.
You just wrap it, you don't solder that.
Yeah, I wrap it and then solder it. Yeah, yep. And then it's super, super strong.
Are these already painted in the colors that you want, or?
These are primed.
They're primed, but
Yeah.
when you put, for example, these black ones up here, are they already painted black?
Yeah.
When you put them on, so you've already had a process in the middle where you stopped and chose each rock that you were going to use, put it on the pattern that you have on the floor, painted it,
Right.
or painted it and put it on the floor. I don't know the order, and then so that this is almost the last step, the gluing them in.
Yeah, I paint them first. Yeah, I use spray paint. And like this piece, I started to do gradations, and so that one, has that gradation that I really like, because it also emphasizes the 3D quality as well.
Yes, it does. The other thing that I like, and you can't see it too much here because we've tilted the windows so the shades a bit, is the cast shadow from your piece.
Yeah.
And in a well-lit place, maybe, and you'll talk to us just in a second about Kaiser, it could provide almost a double art piece.
Yeah.
The art piece itself and the cast shadow, depending on how they illuminated it.
Yeah,
If they illuminated it.
that's true. So the shadows are actually, to me, they're like another element in the piece almost.
That is a really awesome aspect of it. So talk to us about Kaiser.
Well, this piece I did about a year ago, and posted it up on Instagram. And it was kind of the biggest piece that I did, and it kind of had more of a watery feel to it. And then an art consultant found me on Instagram, and they have Kaiser Permanente as one of their clients.
Lovely.
And they asked me if I could do a specific, kind of shape and size for them, based off of this piece called Wavy. And so I made them a bigger version of that, and then I got another commission from Kaiser, which I just finished like a month ago or so. So that was an 8-foot wide piece, 8 foot by 3 foot tall, for a waiting room in a hospital in Sacramento, California.
I wanted to talk to you about the influences in your life, besides the fact that you have nature and the organicness of living here. You talked to me the other night a little bit about the impact of your dad.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he did these amazing stained glass 3D sculptures. So he kind of used stained glass in a very different way than you typically would, which was typically flat. And so he always, you know, kind of did something different every time he made something. And just extraordinary, you know, stained glass lamps, but like, you know, kind of 3D shapes and forms and abstract, representational. He was very inspired by nature as well. And so I was kind of around that all the time, and it was just very inspiring. But he was very creative, big imagination, you know, he was, very innovative. And in fact, what I'm doing now is I inherited a lot of his tools and materials. And so I actually started to solder the grids, the armatures now. And unfortunately, he passed away like 2 years ago. And so I wish, he never taught me how to solder, or I never asked. And so I really wish he was around and he could show me. So I've had to like teach myself. But, you know, I kind of slowly am kind of getting the hang of it more and more. And now I'm just like soldering my armatures.
Nice.
So I'm represented at Tierra Mar Gallery on Canyon Road. Yeah, it's a little cluster of different galleries and shops.
Yeah. How did this come about?
Well, I was part of an artist panel at Site Santa Fe about last January. So it was on COVID and creativity. So I was one of, I think, 5 artists and to speak about our work and how COVID kind of affected our creative process. So I spoke there, and then I ended up showing at Opuntia restaurant, which is a restaurant in the rail yard. And there was somebody in the audience at my talk that also saw my work at Opuntia. And he had contacted me to see if I would be interested in being represented. At that time, he didn't have that gallery. But I was just like, sure, I would love to be represented.
Nice not to have to do the hustle to find the person to take you on.
Yeah.
It had to happen to you, huh?
Yeah, and then
Fortunate.
the next thing I knew is like they bought Tierra Mar. And I had seen that gallery before, and it's a beautiful gallery. So it just was, I feel like I was just really lucky in a lot of ways.
It's an amazing experience here. Thanks so much for opening your home and your studio and letting us kind of invade you for a few hours and see how great it is. It's just wonderful.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for coming. It was really nice to talk to you.
Our pleasure. Nicely done, Karen.
Thank you.
Nicely done. So I would like to take the opportunity. Well, first of all, I want to thank Karen because she did such a great job and she was so gracious to have us at her house. And it's, it's a little awkward sometimes. Your house, your studio is the same place, and to have people walking around with cameras and talking to you. So anyway, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I want to now just open the chat to anybody who has a question or comment for Karen, and I'll let her handle responses as she wishes. Questions, anybody?
Well, I think this is the first time that Karen has seen the video, so I would love to ask Karen to just have a moment to respond to the video. And thanks again, Mark, for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for that. That was very cool to see it, and a little awkward. I don't really like seeing myself in a video like that, but yeah, you guys did a great job the video is amazing. Mark, you did such an excellent job on that. You're a real pro. And so, yeah, it was cool to see it, although a little bit embarrassing too.
No, it's always awkward, yes. Anybody, I can't see everybody on my screen, so might as well just kind of speak up if anybody has a question.
If there are any questions in the chat, Kari, I'll let you know.
Okay, Roxanne?
Yes. Hi, Karen.
Hey.
It was lovely to hear all that. I knew part of the story, but not all of it. And it was really a lovely video, as I put in the chat.
Thank you.
What a gift for an artist to be seen in that way. So, Mark, you did a beautiful job, and that's very special. So I lived in Hawaii for 16 years, and the Hawaiian word for stone is pohaku. And it has a lot of cultural significance in Hawaii. But one of the things I noticed about, or felt, I should say, about your sculptures is this kind of masculine strength of the stone, and then the curvaceous lusciousness of how you bring them together, which for me is a very feminine thing. And I don't think it's that easy to put feminine and masculine energy into art. Do any of those words cross your consciousness when you're creating, or is that just something I see for myself?
No, absolutely. I mean, I feel like you're kind of hitting the nail on the head in a way, because I feel like it's my sculpture is kind of bringing these two different sides of myself together, which I think I mentioned in the video, but just the kind of digital, because I've worked in the tech industry for like almost 3 decades now. And so it's sort of bringing that side of me together with my love of nature. So I feel like it's sort of bringing these opposites, and they could be seen as, masculine, feminine, but it's definitely a feeling of like bringing these opposite parts of myself together.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I love the white one. Was so strange when I first looked at it. On my screen, it looked like holes, and I had to get up super close to see that was the shadow of the rock itself. So anyway, I want to see more white things in person.
Yeah, thanks. That piece was sold last year as like my first piece in this sort of river rock body of work, and it was sold to someone, and I didn't know how to pack them at the time, and it got destroyed in the mail, which was really I know, it was too bad, but now I know how to pack them and ship them. So you learn from your mistakes, and so hopefully at least I learned from that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And I think you just had a sale 2 or 3 days ago at TRMR. Did you know?
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, my first sale at TRMR, my new gallery, which was pretty cool. One of the smaller round pieces got sold. So I just found out about that on Friday. So I guess they're not going to kick me out quite yet.
I would like to ask you about, I know that you're very interested in public art, and any opportunity that you could get to create those types of projects. What is your dream public art project, or what is a project that you've already thought of that you would love to have the opportunity to create?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for asking that. I am inspired by my environment in New Mexico, which is, quite different from and similar in different ways from California. But one thing that's really cool is I have these different animals and vegetation here that are starting to like influence my work. And there's like these little desert bunnies that are like hopping around that I can see like almost every day hopping around. And so they kind of inspired some ideas about that. And actually, Lauren, you might have some of those. I don't know if this is a good time, but so one of the pieces that I was inspired by was kind of making bunnies out of these rocks. And then, you know, kind of like using that, like actually making animals out of rocks and sort of on a bigger scale. So that's something that I would love to do, is just go a lot bigger. Yeah, so these are some of them. So this one is a Mobius kind of water sculpture, but those would all be painted rocks. And the next one is the bunnies. So the bunny is, these would all be made out of painted rocks. So the bunny, and then the path of the bunny is sort of made out of rocks to sort of show the animation of the bunny hopping. So then this one is a roundabout idea of kind of how, I call these rock stocks. So they're kind of like these stacked rocks that look like reeds or stalks of grass or something. But just taking the idea of that I'm working with the rocks and just taking them and sort of scaling them up, I guess, and then kind of doing it a little bit, you know, in a different way, since it's trying to fill up a 3D space rather than it just being on the wall. And then, yeah, this one is, I call the psychedelic succulents. So like I love succulents. I love the shapes and forms of them. So kind of using them as like inspiration, and then using the gradation, you know, to sort of bring in like the digital aesthetic, if you will. But this is really, I really want to do some of these larger scale outdoor pieces. And unfortunately, it's pretty tough to sometimes get those, because I feel like unless you have experience doing it, they're not going to award you one of these types of commissions. But yet, how do you get experience if you don't have never done it before? So it's just a little bit, you know, I think it's hard to break into, but hopefully that'll happen at some point.
Well, it's just so inspiring to see those proposals and what's possible, because, you know, maybe if someone didn't see those ideas, they would think everything that you do is the wall pieces. So I think it's really cool to see the range of different places and spaces that you can adapt to. So those are really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kari, Richard's hand is up. I don't know if you can see it on your iPad, but I just want to let you know.
Sure, Richard, go ahead.
My question, appreciate it. Karen's beautiful work. I've known Karen for many years, but this Zoom call today is so fascinating for me, because I've never really seen the breadth of her work. So it's just phenomenal. Here's a question. I hope it's not a curveball. There's a lot of rocks involved, and I'm not an artist, but I do a lot of hiking, and I'm like, can you talk to us a little bit about what's your experience of collecting the rocks? Like, well, what's your approach? I mean, you said earlier you go on hikes, but do you look for specific rocks? I mean, can you talk to us about like your rock collection process? I'm really curious about this.
Yeah, well, I've got like a giant rock collection. And I think you saw in the photo maybe, but I organize them, you know, extra small, medium, large, extra large, extra large. But yeah, I love the curved shapes of them, and they're all different. And I love that each one's unique, and then when they come together, they sort of make this whole, hopefully. But yeah, I find them on, you know, hikes, and I find them in arroyos and riverbeds, you know, because well, they're river rocks. So places like that. I also find them, I have this favorite hike that I do, like I kind of go to the same place over and over again, but and I don't think this was in the video, but they're like these reddish square kind of rocks from the red rock that's around here. So I'm grabbing, I'm like, oh wow, that's such a cool shape, you know. I'm kind of looking for like rectangular shapes for that piece, you know. So I'm just, and then my backpack is just like full of rocks when I get back.
Well, you,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was about to say, it's just a related question, but do you look for them or they look for you? The rocks?
Oh, I mean, that's a good question. I guess you know what, I'll just grab a ton of rocks and then I'll use a subset of those rocks. So I'd like to have more than I need. And then I'll kind of choose the ones that might work for a particular piece I'm working on. So I have a lot of extra rocks laying around as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Anybody else got some?
We have hands raised. Let's see. We have we have Tracy, it looks like.
Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Karen. So great to see you and congratulations on this fabulous presentation and all your amazing work. Having seen your show in Trekkie, it's particularly satisfying. So, yeah, I wanted to follow up on Richard's question. You mentioned your concern about climate change and the depth of your relationship with the natural world. And we've done our share of hiking on over the years, way back when.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just more of a reflection, possibly a question about removing the rocks from their home territory. And, particularly in New Mexico, we have this indigenous, such a powerful indigenous presence here. And it's just kind of a query about your relationship with the land which harbors the rocks, which hosts the rocks, which and whether there is a ritual or an asking of permission to remove them from their home place. I remember in the Himalayas and trekking the Kali Gandaki Gorge that there was a really big issue with people coming and just lifting the soligrams, the little ammonite shaped shells, and just taking them out of the river. So it's just sort of a kind of a query about your relationship with your sourcing of the rock.
Yeah, I mean, there is a part of me, that I feel sometimes a little strange about that. On the other hand, I feel like, they are sustainable materials in that way, and that I'm not using manufactured materials. I mean, I am a little bit because of the wire and everything, but on some level, it's just, there's always going to be issues there, that you have to take into account. And I guess that's sort of something that, I just feel like, well, maybe, if you think about manufactured materials and how much resources go into those, and you think about the impact on the environment because of that, I feel like, well, maybe because these are natural materials and they're not manufactured, and they're found materials, that at least I'm not having that impact. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
it's more of, it is just a question. And on the other side of the coin is the beautiful way you're honoring the rocks. Mm-hmm. Which most people, it goes as gravel underneath asphalt roads. And so, that's, I appreciate that other side of, we're lifting materials, people are using, obviously we're exploiting the natural resources so heavily in modern, humans always have, right? So it's a complex relationship, right? And you're so beautiful. You're so beautifully honoring them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I do love that each one is different and unique. And I think as a symbol of sort of community, and how that's why also I want to, potentially do larger pieces where each rock could symbolize, you know, the uniqueness of each individual in a community, and, you know, together we make a whole, you know, and I like that symbolism. And so like, I love that each rock is completely unique and different from the next, but yet they do kind of come together, you know, when you make them go from like large to small rocks. They just sort of, sometimes people think that they're actually digital pieces when you don't see them up close. And so I find that interesting, but then you see them up close and you can see all the variety and the different textures and shapes and sizes. So
Richard's hand is up again.
Okay, Richard.
I gotta ask, because we're talking about the rock selection process. If you move, Karen, to larger public structure, the size of the rock's going to become bigger. Have you thought about what is that going to mean for you? Because suddenly you're going to need bigger rocks, right? So that creates I would suspect that will create a challenge in a way, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you know, you could take the pieces and make them much bigger, and you can imagine the armatures, instead of being made out of wire, they're made out of steel rod or what have you, and they're welded instead of soldered, you know. So in some ways they scale up pretty easily, at least in theory, but like in actuality, I think it would be probably, I would find hopefully a fabricator that would be able to do some of the welding aspect. And then, yeah, the rocks are going to be a lot bigger and heavier and like much, we'll see if I ever get one, you know, how it is, but it'll be interesting to see how they translate like that into a bigger scale. And then also like, how do the finishes, you know, you have to really protect them if they're outdoors. So I've been trying to think about that, like what would I put on them, you know, so that they wouldn't, you know, so they don't fade as much, and so they're more durable and things like that. There's a whole bunch of different issues that come into play with that. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how that goes. If I ever get one of them.
If you do get, I want to sign up if there's a call about, you know, if you get something big like this, because I'm really curious about what is that going to mean for your creative process, because suddenly it becomes a collaborative effort, right? You have, like you said, like different people that need to assemble and do things. And I'm really curious, like, what does that mean for an artist to maintain your vision of that art, but having like now people maybe picking the big rocks and maybe doing with the welding and stuff like that. So if you guys do that kind of presentation, sign me up. I want to hear, I want to learn about this.
I will, for sure. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.
Mark. You're muted, Mark.
Hi, Karen.
Hey.
Hey. So I'm going to sort of follow up on that line of questioning, because it's made me think, obviously, of like the levitating mass, at the LA Museum.
Oh yeah,
and I've forgotten the artist's name now. But anyway, so it Heiser or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so anyway, you've got your work cut out for you when it comes to moving big rocks, I guess. But well, and so that makes me kind of just think of, well, do you have any particular influences, artists that you know that have inspired you in your process at all, or you know, influenced how you go about approaching this kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, actually somebody on Instagram, when they saw my work, they made a comment that it was, it looked like it was a combination of Andy Goldsworthy meets Bridget Riley. And so Andy Goldsworthy is an artist who does a lot of sculptures out in nature with natural found materials and just like beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then Bridget Riley is an op artist. And she, I think she painted a lot, I'm not in the 70s, I think 60s and 70s. But so this person said it looked like it was sort of like the combination of those two artists. And I loved that, because that's exactly kind of what I feel like I'm doing, but I wouldn't have ever articulated it like that. But sort of the op art, you know, the optical illusions and the bright colors and the saturated colors, and then the natural materials, you know, and it just, yeah, it was pretty cool when they said that. But yeah, Andy Goldsworthy's a huge influence. There's, you know, a lot of others, and I'm sorry, I'm like spacing out right now because I guess I'm a little nervous, but but I would say those two would be very, you know, high major influences.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And looks like Scott, Kari, I just don't know if you can see everyone raising their hand, but Scott has a hand raised.
Hey, Scott.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Good. You too.
Hey, you know, one of the things I haven't heard you mention, and unless I missed it, which I might have, but the illusion that a lot of your work has to halftone dot patterns, and I wondered what your thinking was behind that. I'm sure you did think of it.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for asking that. It's funny because in graduate school I did some pieces that were kind of based on that, with little dots of like hot melt glue and different colors. And then I just thought, well, that was just, you know, back then, but I think it's coming out again, where I feel like these rocks are kind of like these dots, almost like that you would use, you know, potentially like in printing something, or I don't know. I think it's there in there someplace, although I wouldn't say like that's what I'm trying to do now, but it's definitely like the one like hazy, I think the black rocks has sort of that effect of like it almost being like it's like a printed type of an effect with the black rocks. So yeah, I think that, you know, I think that's the digital aspect of my background coming out. So yeah, I think that's completely relevant.
Can I sneak in another question that's in another direction?
Go for it.
So and somebody mentioned the white one, which I thought that's my favorite, the all white ones. And in fact, I think I may need to talk to you about because I have a wall space that would be perfect.
Okay, well, you know how to reach me, so.
I do. But I'm curious, and this really isn't a reflection of how I see us like working on a piece for me, but how do you work when you get a commission? What's the dynamic between you and your client? Do you like how much creative you know, ownership do you keep? Do you engage them? I mean, obviously the location is really important, but how, you know, I mean, do you find that they want to get really involved, and is there a balance so that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I haven't had, you know, that many commissions, but I think in terms of it, certainly the size will be a major aspect of it. They, like the Kaiser commissions I got, had to fit into a particular you know, wall dimension. And then they also wanted the colors to sort of go with the other colors in the room that they were going to be in. So I worked with their palette, you know, on that, but they were pretty, they wanted it based on the wavy one. So they, you know, kind of had that in mind already. So I just pretty much took their input. We went back and forth a couple times. I did some different colored sort of renderings of different concepts, but it was, you know, pretty straightforward. So I was pretty lucky with them. I think that they were pretty flexible, you know, with things, but yeah, I'll just, yeah, just email me if you're interested, and I will be flexible.
I also think that there was a comment about, well, you started talking about it, like with the bunny and the animals and something more, you know, I do think there is a lot of room to expand to expand into an more organic kind of area, and I like I was sitting here thinking, well, I wonder what this work will look like in 5 years from now. And I think you may have already answered it, so I'm not really asking you to answer it, but I think
yeah, no, me too. I mean, it's like I've been in Santa Fe for 1.5 years, and I feel like my work has, kind of evolved in that time. So yeah, I do hope I do some public art pieces, some large, outdoor ones, but who knows, who knows what will happen.
Karen, if you want to do this larger public art, do you think that it would be in your best interest to do a prototype? So you can show people not particularly what it would look like, but the elements involved and figuring out the coating on the stones and figuring out the width and the different armature to do it. I mean, because as you said, it's pretty hard for them to engage with you if they don't have anything to show them. And yet, obviously, like most of us, when you go into a new direction, it's exploratory, and it's not going to be necessarily the end product that you would show someone for a specific project, but at least you would have something to say, these are the things that I use, this is how it's protected from the weather. And I would do it in this design or that design, as you have shown us in with the pictures. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for sure, like doing a little prototype of a larger one of these rocks, that is kind of coated and painted in with a coating that would hopefully be very weather resistant, stuff like that, which I would definitely want to do for sure. And then even like a maquette or something, I've seen, different artists do that, which would be kind of cool. And then you kind of see it smaller scale, but in the actual layout and everything. But yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll find out at some point about that.
Have some work to do, I see.
Yeah.
That's good.
For sure.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from those watching and listening?
I'll be brash and volunteer my acreage for you to experiment with.
There you go.
Thank you. I might just take you up on that.
Studio too.
What?
You can use the studio too.
Oh, how nice.
Wow. I might just have to take you up on that. Thanks.
So we're getting close to our time. If there are no other questions, I'll give you a couple comments here. Just that from TAAC, we're very grateful for the opportunity to have these sorts of interviews with Karen. We'll have the fourth one will be in another month or so. Watch for news. We'll be publishing information about it. We're also game to the idea of having our artists interview other artists. It doesn't have to be Lauren, Aaliyah, and I doing this work. We are going to keep Mark on board, however, because he makes this function. But we're happy to have other people volunteer. And if you would like to do that, please get in contact with one of us, and we'll work with you to see how we can do that. It would be, I think, beneficial to everybody to have that experience, not only to have the experience, but to share your abilities with other people and learn just as much as we have in the way we've done these things. And I think that is about it. Oh, I had a suggestion from someone to say that we, as long as it doesn't get too cloggy, I guess we would like to be able to have people tell us what they're working on, shows they might be in, things like that. We can designate a few minutes at the end of each TAAC talk. And if there's someone who's having a show or a particular experience that they would like to share with everybody, that would be that would be fine. So we'll leave it at that. And I want to thank Mark again for, he's our videographer, in case you hadn't caught that. He's excellent, and we're really honored and privileged to have him doing this work. And
can I jump in for a second there, Karen? Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you, Karen. It was great. It was just a real pleasure to come and see your work in person. It's like most artwork, I always feel like the video kind of just doesn't do it justice when you're with it in front of it. It's it's just a very different experience, and it's really beautiful stuff. So and it was a great interview, I thought, with you and Kari. It was just a lot of fun to be together. So in the spirit of sort of announcing things, works in progress, I just gonna raise my hand on that so that everybody, just to introduce myself, I'm the one who shoots these interviews that we've been doing. I'm sort of an unofficial member of TAAC. I'm Lauren's husband, and I'm a videographer. And so I would just wanted to put it out there that if people are artists or otherwise needing video services in their lives or know of other people, we'll put my website in the comments, or you can always reach out to Lauren or Leah or Kari if you need the information in the future. And these are a lot of fun to produce, and they actually, in reality, they move very quickly when it comes to producing these, because we're all busy people. So they come together as quickly, and I hope as effectively as possible, but they're really intended as a springboard for, the broader conversation here. And anyway, so I'm glad that everybody likes them, and they're a lot of fun to do, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So thank you guys again.
oh, thank you, Mark. We're very grateful.
Yeah, you did a great job.
The other part of the team is Lauren is our techie person who's behind me all this, because I only know how to do some of this, and so she's sort of behind my shoulder here, guiding me through. And Aaliyah is here in the chat, but she's quiet. Aaliyah does a lot of our graphics and things like that. So from the team and from everybody, I will remind you that this is a collective. We do it together. We want your participation. We find it actually refreshing not to have to do it all ourselves. So please jump in if you have skills and desires to do things with us. Thank you so much.
If anyone has any upcoming shows or anything you'd like to put it in the chat, or always send us on Instagram or email. We're always delighted to promote other artists. That's really, as Kari mentioned, such a big, important part of the collective. So don't be shy, let us know, and we're glad to get the word out for you.
Yes. Roxanne.
How much is Taos part of the collective? I live in Santa Fe, and that's I've been following you guys for a while, and I wasn't sure how.
When we started this, I was living, maybe I wasn't because it was the pandemic. I had to move out of Taos due to health reasons and the altitude, but we centered it in Taos and then almost immediately expanded it. So we basically call ourselves Northern New Mexico, which includes Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and everything basically north of Albuquerque. So no, you're fine. Please join us, get your name on the mailing list, and there really isn't. I mean, the formality of it is non-existent. We kind of fly a little bit by the seat of our pants. That's how we put that first show together in 3 months, thanks to some really talented people. So, we can work pretty quickly and pretty well together. But we would sure like to have an expanded team. And if anybody wanted to perhaps work with us more closely and you have some specific skills to help out, we'll talk to you. Tell us about it. All right, but you're in. Karen, it's been a pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you so much, everybody. And Kari, thanks for everything. And Mark and Lauren, and thanks everybody for coming. It was so good to see all these familiar faces. So thank you so much.
I think your mom was here.
Yep, she was here.
Yay.
She was here.
Yay, Mom.
Yay, Mom.
All right. So Lauren, we're gonna sign off.
I'm going to